Okay, so thank you for joining my Yoga for Knees. If you are a runner or you're a cyclist, there's also some YouTube videos especially for you. And remember, there's a whole range of videos on my membership area, on demand, unlimited access for you to start to work on improving your mobility, improving your body's function in your everyday life, and maybe working to some fun goals like a headstand, but really not essential. So I would love to practice with you there, but today let's focus on our knees. Okay, so we're going to be doing a class breaking down yoga for your knees. So thinking about knees, not necessarily if you've even got painful knees, but we're working to make sure that you don't get to the point where you get painful knees. And if you do have painful knees, here's going to be some really great strengthening exercises to help work all of those muscles that are in conjunction with that knee joint to make sure that they are working the best that they can. Remember, I am not a specialist, so please seek medical attention if you do need to. And just use these as a guide. It's very much a guide for all different body types. It's not specifically used. So if you do get any real pains, I would say stop, go and see a specialist, and then you can always come back. Okay, you are going to need a block and a strap today, and I am not going to be giving an alternative to a block, which I usually do, just because the block is a really good distance to keep our knees at hips distance apart. Okay, so just the tiniest little bit about knees and knee pain. So you could be having knee pain from weak muscles around, could be that repetitive exercising from running, jumping, those kind of things, and those weak muscles around it just exasperating the problem. And it could be something a bit more long term, so osteoporosis, so that bone density getting less and less as we get older usually, but yoga can improve these things, so it's really important to make sure that even if you just add a couple of these stretches in, it's going to make a really big difference. So just some housekeeping to start with, to make you start to learn about your body, because I'm all about functional yoga and I want you to learn about your body so that you can start to see these subtle changes and how you can improve them yourself. So we're going to start standing up. So start standing up just wherever you want to be. We're going to be in our mountain pose. So you've got your bony bits of your hips, your feet straight down, toes straight forward, feet parallel to one another. Now just relax, hands wherever. And I want you to think about your feet. Okay, am I rolling to the outside of my feet, so the outside edges? Or am I rolling to the inside edges of my feet? Or maybe you're completely neutral and your big toe all the way around to your little toe are completely grounded the same. Maybe are you more forward? Are you more back? I really want you to think about all of these areas, because this is something, all of these tiny things, go to your knees, go to your ankles, go to your hips, all the way up to that head, all about posture. So think about this, just maybe have a play around, exaggerate that movement, just so you can feel, okay, when you come back to your normal standing, where am I? And then I want everybody to really spread their toes and flatten them down to the ground, because in yoga, we really want our feet to be grounded as much as our hands. And wearing our shoes nowadays, they are so restrictive that it means our toes get smaller, get tighter, and that does have a huge impact on our posture. So in our yoga where we're not wearing shoes, think about grounding those toes as much as you think about grounding those feet. So now we have got a good understanding of how our feet are, maybe how our muscles work with our standing. We are going to move on to our hips and our pelvis alignment, because again, this can have a big impact on knee pain. So very, very quickly, there is so much more things that go on with our hips and our knees, but very, very quick test. I want everybody to find the pointy bit just above your bum. Okay, I've got mine just above your bum, and then the pointy bit on your hips. Okay, and then so you've got this bit, maybe you even get a tape measure or something, or even your strap. And then draw a line. Do your fingers match? If your fingers match, you've got a neutral pelvis alignment. If your back one is higher, like so, so they don't match, it's higher, then you've got an anterior tilt, so your bum is sticking out. This can be caused by weak glutes, weak core, tightness all around. But if your hips are higher, your bum sticks under, maybe you're slouching like this, really exaggerated, you've got a posterior tilt. And again, this can be caused by your hip flexors, can be caused by your glutes, a real tightness in that lower back as well. So great to have that power to know how you are in your pelvis alignment. The next one, the final one, we're going to come all the way down to our bellies. And we're going to do some internal and external tests for our hips. So you come all the way down, maybe you rest your head onto your hands, feet up to the sky, make sure they're flexed, and then our knees are together, our feet are together. And then you're going to drop your feet out to the side, making sure you still at this 90-degree angle, and see how far down those feet get. You can have a check back. So this is working our internal hip rotation. So our legs, our hips are rotating inwards toward our body. Think about there's a central line of the body running through the top of the head, through the belly button. So if your legs don't go that low, then you maybe need to work on your internal. The next one we're going to do, this is the final test before we get to our exercises, to our yoga. You're going to take your knees out, the soles of the feet together, and then you're going to drop those feet down to the ground. Try to relax the rest of the body and drop the feet down and see how low do they go. Quickly check back again. And if they're not that low, if you really find it hard, if they're really high, this is all to do with your external hip rotation. So especially in poses like Warrior 2, we really need to be working on our external hip rotation, because that makes sure that our knee alignment is correct. So you have just been given so much information: anterior tilt, internal, external hip rotation, and that's just a tiny bit. So even if you just remember one thing, that is great. So we're going to come into our exercises. Grab your blocks, we're going to come to a wall. So I've got my door here, so wherever you can get into your space, onto a wall. We're going to be working on aligning our hips right at the start of our practice. So close to your wall, we're going to be coming into a reverse tabletop. So lower yourself down, your knees are bent and your feet are onto the wall. Try to get your knees and feet to the 90-degree angle with your knees above your hips. And then our blocks, you've got your short bit here, that's going to be towards your face, and the other short bit is towards the wall. Place that in between the knees, and then drive the knees together ever so slightly. We don't want to burn ourselves straight away. And that is going to help our hips start to sink down to the ground, help them to level out, because there's always going to be, or usually going to be, a misalignment in the hips. One's maybe higher than the other. At the same time, really think about all of those toes grounding onto the wall, so all the way from the big toe to the little toe. And allow the rest of your body to be nice and still, nice and calm. Just feeling those hips settle down. That breath nice and calm, deep inhales through the nose, exhaling through the nose. Maybe even you close down your eyes here, really settle into the practice. Now this is always a really good one to come back to if you do notice that you do have some hip misalignment. We are going to come out of this one now, so take 3 more breaths and then start to prepare to come back to your mat. Okay, at the end of that last breath, take that block away and then start to move onto your mat. Taking that block could be handy, taking the strap with you as well. Okay, now you are on the floor. We're going to come into a hamstring stretch. So tightness in the hamstrings can have a real great impact on our knees. So either you keep your left knee bent or take it long. We're going to be stretching the right hamstring first. Bring that right knee into your chest. Take that strap to the underside of that foot. Grab hold of that strap both sides and start to straighten out that right leg, flexing the right foot. If you don't flex the right foot, you're not engaging the shin muscles, and in return the hamstrings aren't allowed to lengthen. So it's really important to have this flexed foot, and that's in any kind of forward bends where we want to stretch the hamstring. Keep this right shoulder into the ground. So if it's off of the ground, maybe you need to bend through your knee. Maybe you need to just take a little bit more length in that strap. Breathing here. With every inhale, think about the toes lengthening further. And every exhale, maybe you bring that foot closer to the ground. Keeping that breath. Maybe you lengthen that left leg. That's going to help that hip flexor extend as well. Final inhale here, exhale, bending this right knee, taking it to the outside of our chest, drawing it in towards our armpit. Maybe you take a shorter grip now on that strap. You can even grab hold of the outside of that foot, coming into half happy baby. Drawing that knee towards the chest, just working on our hip mobility now. Keeping that shoulder into the ground. Keep breathing. Inhale all the way back up, switching over to the other side. Left knee up, maybe you start with that right knee bent. Taking that left leg long to the sky. Flexing those toes, making sure you're grounding that left shoulder. Making sure both hips are down to the ground, they're not lifting off, especially not that left hip. Maybe that leg extends slightly more, maybe you work to slightly more straightened knee, but remember absolutely you keep those knees bent. Exhale, we're going to bend all the way through this left leg now, drawing that knee to the outside of the chest, towards that armpit, keeping the foot flexed. Maybe you straighten out this right leg now, working that hip flexor as well at the front. Breathing here. Final inhale. Exhale, completely release. Taking that block away to the side. Grabbing hold of your block again. Now we're going to be coming into our bridge. So maybe it's really uncomfortable for your lower back in a normal bridge. So what you can do is take this block with the short ends facing both sides of the yoga mat and place it under your lower back. But I still want you, if you're like this, I still want you to be engaging the inner thighs and thinking about this pelvis tipping towards your face. If not, if you're comfortable going into your bridge, you're going to be having your feet hips width apart, so think about those bony bits of your hips, just about being able to touch those heels. Knees pointing directly to the sky so everything is parallel. Knees are really prone to dropping inwards and outwards when we want them to just go forwards and back. That's all the knee is, isn't it? Forwards, back, forwards, back. And as soon as the knee starts wobbling side to side, that's when that pain can start to occur. We're going to take our block again, the same as we did on the wall, in between those knees, so the short bit is facing your face, and we're squeezing those knees together again, because this is going to help engage those thighs, and when we come into our normal bridge pose, our body is going to understand knees up to the sky. You can have your hands down. We're going to do this 3 times. Big inhale, squeeze the glutes. The glutes are squeezing so much you're tucking your pelvis towards your face. Thinking about all 4 corners of the feet, so the big toe, little toe, and the heels grounding into the mat. You don't want to roll to the outside of that edge of the foot. We did the test earlier. If you're somebody that does that, really think about the big toes grounding. Your calves may be on fire because you're not used to engaging your legs in such a way. Exhale all the way down. Maybe just readjust that block if you need to. 2 more times. Inhale, squeeze, tuck the pelvis towards the face, all the way up. Now think about this crease under your bum and the underneath of your knees, that distance getting shorter, not necessarily about height, so you really want to lengthen the whole of the underside of your body. Absolutely, you come out of it and back into it if you need to, and if your knees are really hurting, you can always come into it with that block underneath your lower back, or just bow out. Exhale all the way down. 1 more time, big inhale, drive all the way up. Really engage those glutes. Lengthen that spine all the way to the front of the mat. 3 big breaths here. Driving that block, trying to almost squeeze it flat together. Exhale all the way down, taking that block away. This time, taking the feet to the outside of the mat and allowing your knees to knock inwards. This is just going to help that lower back to settle in. Remembering to breathe. Whilst we're still here on our backs, I want you to walk the feet back inwards, and this time we're taking the soles of the feet together and the knees out to the side. So this is working on our external hip rotation, so our hips are going away from the body. And just settle here. If you've got 2 blocks and this is really uncomfortable, if you can grab some cushions, you can always put these as support underneath the thighs as well. If not, just really allow yourself to settle in here. You can have your heels, they can be a little bit further away from the body if the heels close to the groin is too uncomfortable for you. Breathing here. With every exhale, think about those knees falling further out to the sides, closer to the ground. Try to relax those glutes and that lower back. Three more big breaths here. Feeling more and more settled with every exhale. At the end of that final exhale, help this left knee all the way up and over, and your body is going to follow it so that we're lying onto our sides, coming into clamshells. So this helps strengthen those glutes and that external rotation. Absolutely prop yourself up. Your knees are probably just outside of that yoga mat, so your hips, your knees probably about a 45-degree angle, And then the heels are probably just in line with that bum if you're going to look at them. Absolutely put your hand onto your hip. And that's just going to help send signals from the brain down to that part that we want to work. So hand onto the hip. We want the movement to come from the hip, from the glute, rather than the knee or the ankle. So we're going to be squeezing the glute. That's going to lift up this leg. And we're thinking about this hip rotating away from the body. And then back down. And up, squeeze that glute. So maybe the movement is really small and you might find a difference on each side, but strengthening the glutes in this way is amazing for people that do running, do cycling, because it works on all of this outside strength, stabilizing the knee. Keep going. Really small, slow movements is absolutely fine, because we really want to think about that brain connecting with those movements. Maybe even put your hand onto your bum. We're going to do 10 more. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good job. Switching over to the other side. So again, you can prop yourself up or lie all the way down. Set those legs up again, so knees directly on top of one another. Hand onto your hip, hand onto your bum. Really slow movements, 15 in total. You might find one side is a lot easier. Okay, 10 more for me. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Really good job. Relax down here. This time we're coming all the way down to our bellies. Roll all the way to your belly. Completely relax here for a second. And allow those heels to fall out to the side, toes tucking in. Okay, final breath here. Coming into our Sphinx pose, so we want our feet flat on the ground again, so completely fronts of the feet down, heels facing up. Propping ourselves up onto our forearms. Our elbows are directly under our shoulders. If this is super uncomfortable, you can take those hands a little bit further forward. And then what we want to do here is really sink the pelvis down. You may want to activate the glutes slightly, but we don't want to activate the glutes so much that you come into external rotation, so you don't want to start to point the toes outwards. So just think about that. You're starting to understand the body, so we want the toes parallel, feet flat. Pulling the heart through, so think about pulling the hand back on the mat. That's going to pull this chest and heart through, squeezing the shoulder blades together, sinking that pelvis further down to the ground. Helping that mobility of our lower back. Remember that lower back, if it's tight, that's going to cause you to have that posterior tilt. If this is super uncomfortable for you, absolutely, you come down, place one hand on top of one another and put your forehead onto that hand. That's still going to give you a stretch of that lower back. Maybe you can put a block underneath if you want to keep working on bringing that chest higher and higher. Wherever you are, keep breathing. Keep feeling that difference between the pelvis sinking and the chest lifting. 3 more breaths. At the end of your last breath, come all the way back down to the mat. Just allow that back to settle back in. Just for a moment, we're going to come into closed knees, child's pose. Now, if you know that your knees, the fronts of your knees, are really uncomfortable stretching all the way back like this, either you grab a cushion to place underneath your knees so that when you sit back, you're still a little bit elevated. That means that that distance that your knees are stretching all the way back is less, or just don't do it, okay? And you can meet us standing, that's where we're going to be meeting. So if it's okay for you, come all the way down to your closed knees, child's pose, hands in front or behind, wherever you want them. And just settle in here, feel that back stretching all the way from the crown of the head, rounding down to that tailbone, hips sinking down to the heels. Now just quickly take your hands back to your heels and notice if there's a difference between which heel is meeting the hips. It could be that they're both the same. In my case, my right heel doesn't touch my hip, so I know that I always need to think about that alignment of my hips because they're not obviously aligned. Breathing here, one more big breath. And if you do have really painful knees, be slow and careful to come all the way up to, I'm not going to direct you, come all the way up. Grab your block, take this with you to the front of your mat. Coming into mountain pose, so like we did at the start, feet are hips width apart. Remember those bony bits of the hips. All four corners of the feet are grounding to the ground, hands just away from the body, palms facing the front of the mat. Now I want you to feel every single part of your body working. Yes, we're just standing, but that doesn't mean that everything shouldn't be firing up. So all four corners of the feet grounding. Shins and calves are working. The knees are pulling up. So that means that our quads are working, they're engaged. That allows the hamstrings to start to stretch. That starts to stretch out these hip flexors. Glutes are firing. Now I want you to focus on if you fire up your glutes without really activating the quads, do you start to roll to the outside edges of those feet? And when you notice that you need to fire up the quads, so you're pulling those knees up, squeezing the knees, maybe this is for me, so you have to think about you. If I squeeze my glutes and I don't activate my quads, I come into external hip rotation, so I start to roll to the outside edges of my hip, I start to roll to the outside edges of my feet and my hips start to go outwards. But if I pull up my quads as well, I notice that my big toes start to ground down again. So all of these things are so important, give you so much power in your body. Coming into our bellies, we've got our core engaged, so that area underneath our belly is pulling towards our spine. Noticing if we're sticking our bums out, anterior tilt, or we're sticking our bums under, posterior tilt. We've had to think about this already. Trying to find the least amount of curve as possible, still got a natural curve in the spine though. Chest is nice and bright, nice and open, heart is pulling through. Arms are active. Shoulders are just gently drawing away from the ears. Ears are over the shoulders. And crown of the head, that's just slightly further back than you may think, is driving up to the sky. So many things to think about in our mountain. Staying here. 3 more breaths to really focus on all areas of the body from top to toe. Really nice. Coming into our chair pose now, so grabbing the block. This is a great strengthening exercise for you to do. Now for me in chair pose, I'm going to do the longest part in between my thighs, so I'm not doing too much pressure on my knees. This could be what you do as well. So test it out. And then I'm still going to have my feet hips width apart. I can feel my bony bits of the hips, feet directly down. I'm squeezing this block so much, exactly like we were doing in our mountain pose. On your exhale, you're taking your hands up and you're sinking your bum down. Maybe you don't come down that much. Just check, can you still see your toes? Is the weight in your heels, can you wiggle your toes? We don't want these ribs to be sticking out, we want them pulling in. So think about those things as well. Try to get the biceps by the ears, but if that causes you to stick out your chest, just take them slightly further in front. Breathing here, really work that block in towards one another. You're going to be making sure that your knees are going to be stable, working on all of those areas of the muscles, the quads, the hamstrings, the shin, that all work those knees, making sure they're strengthening in the right way to keep that knee supported. Inhale, come all the way up. Really good. We're going to do that 3 times, but you come out of it, come back into it if you need to. Come all the way down, arms up, sink that bum down. Can you wiggle your toes? Can you see your toes? Is the weight in your heels? Are you squeezing that block in? Is your chest flaring or is it contained? Think about the pelvis. Maybe if you're really anterior tilted, you're sticking your bum out a lot, maybe your pelvis is tucked, but you assess if that needs to happen. Because if you are posterior, your bum already tucks, then you may actually need to stick your bum out a little bit. Breathing here. Final inhale, going to come all the way up, really nice. Final time. Inhale all the way down. Maybe you come a little bit lower this time. Making sure all 4 corners of the feet are grounding still. Everything is working. You're breathing in through your nose, out through your nose. Final inhale. Exhale all the way up. Really good work. Taking that block away. Coming into a standing balance now. So if you need a wall or if you need a chair, go and grab it. Coming into our tree pose. So you're going to be wanting to ground the feet. How many times do I say this? It must be important, right? So many times when we balance, we start to rock to the outside edges of our feet. No wonder we fall over. So think about that big toe grounding. Remember that fact that if you don't have a big toe, you can't balance. So it's so important, that is for our balance. You want your glutes to be working. When we've got our leg up in our tree, you don't want to be dumping into this standing hip. These glutes are squeezing into this midline here. Does not matter where your foot is. Maybe your front of the foot is still down and the heel is up by your ankle. Maybe your foot is on your calf. It's not on your knee though, because we don't want our knee to be pushing outwards. Remember, knee is just for front and back movements. Or maybe it's up in the inside of that thigh. Wherever it is, you want that leg and that foot to be squeezing in towards one another so much. You want to think about this knee drawing to the back if you're on your mat, to the back of your mat or away from the front of your body. Squeezing this glute in, this standing glute, and really working everything, making sure it's on fire. And finally, crown of the head high. It helps me by engaging my core as well. Maybe your hands are up high, maybe you're holding onto a chair, wherever you are. Really think about being tall and lifted. Engaging those quads. Maybe there's a slight bend in that standing leg. If you know that you are somebody that's hypermobile, that means that when you start to extend, as you can see in my elbow, I go a little bit too far, so I need to keep a slight micro bend in my elbow, and that might be the same with your knees, because that is not going to help any knee pain. You want to strengthen the muscles around it to keep it stable. Breathing here, really, really nice. We're working on all of those muscles and ligaments in our feet and everything in our ankles as well. As long as they're strong, that's going to also impact our knee strength as well. Inhale, exhale, release. Really nice. Maybe you want to shake out that leg. Onto the other side. So assess, okay, where do I want my foot? Do I want it high or low? Because you really want to be able to think about balancing. Pulling in this glute, pulling in this hip. Don't allow yourself to dip, because again, my spine is now not aligned. What do you think that's doing down to your knees, to your ankle, to your shoulders? Align the spine. Hands wherever you want it. Knee drawing out, so you're engaging these glutes, both glutes. You're thinking about that big toe, that standing big toe grounding into the mat. You're not going too much onto the outside of that foot. And this quad is lifting, that knee is engaged. Remember, you can absolutely do a slight micro bend in that standing leg. Breathing here, really nice. Maybe you close your eyes. It's going to really test your balance. You're going to feel yourself wobbling so much. My tree has fallen. Okay, come all the way down. Really good work. We're going to start to cool down now. So everybody onto the mat. However you get there, again, be careful to your knees. You know where your knees can go and where they can't. Coming all the way down to our backs. Coming into a reclined pigeon stretch. So taking our right foot, crossing it over the left thigh. The ankle is to the outside of that left thigh. Maybe you stay here, drawing this knee towards the front of the mat, so away from your face. Or maybe you pick up the left foot, flexing both feet, grabbing hold behind that hamstring or even in front of that left shin and pulling that knee towards your face. Making sure these shoulders are on the ground. If they're not on the ground, it just means you're stretching a little bit too much. So come slightly out of it because we want the whole of that back to be grounded. Breathing here, keep thinking about that right knee drawing away from your face. Stretching out those glutes, stretching out that external hip. Final inhale. Exhale all the way down, other side. Left leg up and over, flexing this foot. Ankle to the outside of that right thigh. Maybe you stay here, drawing that knee away from the face. Or you pick up the right foot, flexing the toes. Taking hold of that behind the hamstring or the shins. And drawing the shoulders down to the ground. Breathing here. With every exhale, as that hip starts to open up a bit more, maybe you draw this right knee closer to your face, but absolutely not essential. Final inhale. Exhale, release all the way down, really nice. Coming into a really big morning stretch, hands out long behind you. And then we're going to take our fingers and our toes over to the right, so we're stretching all down the left side of the body. Keep the left shoulder on the ground. Really great IT band stretch. If anybody is a runner, stretching down the outside of that hip all the way down to the outside of the knee. Inhale all the way back through center. Exhale over to the left now. Stretching the right side of the body. Keeping that right shoulder onto the ground. Inhale, come back through center, really nice. Working into our Shavasana, so if there's any other movements you feel like you need, maybe you just want to wiggle the hips a bit, taking the knees from side to side. Maybe you want to come into a supine twist, whatever you feel like. And then when you're ready, come and meet us in stillness in your Shavasana. Closing the eyes down, taking the legs out long, feet dropping to the sides. Hands away from the body, palms facing up. And really allow yourself to feel heavy here. Feeling that belly rising and falling. Trying to make a commitment to yourself to start to learn more about how your body moves, and trying to do these exercises maybe 3 times a week. Maybe you just pick out one that you repetitively do because you know that maybe you've got weak glutes or you need to work on your external hip rotation. So you pick one exercise to work on to help that knee health, help strengthen the areas that are keeping that knee stability. Really allow those feet to fall out to the sides, shoulders to fall down into the ground, and just double check that your jaw is relaxed so the tongue is away from the roof of the mouth. You're not clenching those teeth, maybe even your lips are parted. Starting to bring some movement back into your body, wiggling the toes, wiggling the fingers. Coming into a big morning stretch again, fingers and toes as far away from one another as possible. Bending up the knees, rolling over to one side, head resting onto the bicep. Keeping the eyes closed, come all the way up to seated, coming up to seated, whatever position is comfortable for you. Hands onto your thighs, palms facing up, allowing the shoulders to sink back down. Sitting up nice and tall. Maybe you're sitting on a block, that's going to help you not hunch over. Really cement that commitment to yourself, commitment to maybe your yoga practice, or just the commitment to making your knees healthy and pain-free again. Knowing when you need to bow out, knowing when you maybe need to push yourself a little bit more. Hands to heart center, bow the chin to the chest, thumbs to the third eye. Well done for taking this time to focus on yourself, helping you improve your movement, your functionality, all through the power of yoga. When you're ready, take the hands away from the eyes and start to blink the eyes open.